In the winter of 1976, the $6 Million Man TV show was filming in a haunted house in Long Beach, California. When a crew member went to move a garish-looking dummy to a different spot, the dummy's arm broke off at the elbow. It was then that the crew member noticed the end of a human bone sticking out of the truncated limb. This wasn't a mannequin. This was Elmer McCurdy, a career criminal who died 65 years earlier in Oklahoma. My name's Moxie, and this is your Brain on Facts. As a forensic science/true crime/weird history buff of the first order, I almost didn't include McCurdy in today's episode of Well-Traveled Corpses, because his story makes all of these lists. But you know me, I like to be thorough. Elmer McCurdy was born January 1st of 1880 to an unwed mother and adopted by his uncle and aunt. The first 20 years of his life were fairly unremarkable, until a string of personal losses led him to say, "Screw it, I'ma go rob some trains." A brief stint in the army had seen him trained to use nitroglycerin for demolition, and he decided to blend the two careers. The trouble was, he tended to be heavy-handed with the explosives, once costing his gang 90% of the money in a safe he blew. The remaining 10% that they did get was in coins that were melted together. McCurdy's final robbery took place on October 4th, 1911, near Okeeza, Oklahoma, when McCurdy and his men mistakenly stopped a passenger train instead of the one carrying $400,000 that they were after. The men were only able to steal about $46 from the mail clerk, some whiskey, a pistol, and the train conductor's watch. A newspaper account of the robbery called it, quote, one of the smallest in the history of train robbery. Even still, a $2,000 bounty was put on McCurdy, and someone gave him up. In the wee hours of October 7th, a posse of sheriffs tracked McCurdy to a hay shed using bloodhounds. Gunfire was exchanged for over an hour, and in the end, McCurdy was shot in the chest and killed. McCurdy's body was subsequently taken to the Johnson Funeral Home in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, where it went unclaimed. Joseph Johnson, the owner and undertaker, embalmed the body with an arsenic-based preservative and stored it in the back of the funeral home, refusing to bury the body or release it until he had been paid for his services. Johnson then decided if he was going to get any money out of this situation, he'd have to be more proactive. He dressed the corpse up in street clothes, placed a rifle in McCurdy's hands, and stood him up in the corner of the funeral home. For a nickel apiece, visitors could see the bandit who wouldn't give up. McCurdy became a popular attraction at the funeral home and also drew the attention of carnival promoters, though Johnson refused numerous offers to buy the mummified body. In 1916, a man claiming to be Elmer McCurdy's long-lost brother got permission from the sheriff to take custody of the body and ship it to San Francisco for a proper burial. The following day, Johnson released the body to this man and an accomplice, who then put it on a train bound for Arkansas City, Kansas. The men were in fact James and Charles Patterson, owners of the Great Patterson Carnival shows, where McCurdy's corpse would be featured until 1922, when Patterson sold his operation to Louis Sonny. Sonny used McCurdy's corpse in his traveling Museum of Crime show, which featured wax replicas of famous outlaws such as Bill Doolin and Jesse James. In 1928, the corpse was part of the official sideshow that accompanied the Trans-American Foot Race. In 1933, it was acquired for a time by director Dwayne Esper to promote his exploitational film, Narcotic, with an exclamation point. In a very William Castle-style move, the corpse was placed in the lobby of the theater as a dead dope fiend. By this time, some 22 years after death, McCurdy's body had become mummified. The skin was hard, and the body had shriveled to the size of a child. Esper claimed that this deterioration was proof of the danger of drugs. McCurdy's corpse would bounce between warehouses and movie sets for the next 4 decades. Damage from mishandling meant that the corpse was no longer all that lifelike, which is how it found its way to the Laugh in the Dark Funhouse at the Pike in Long Beach. After it was discovered that he wasn't a mannequin, McCurdy was sent to the LA coroner. By this time, the body was essentially petrified and had been covered in wax and layers of paint. It weighed about 50 pounds or 23 kilos and was 63 inches or 160 centimeters tall. Some hair was still visible on the sides and back of the head, but McCurdy's ears, big toes, and many of his fingers were missing. Of all of the clues that led the coroner and accompanying historians to determine the mummy's identity, the most interesting was found in McCurdy's mouth. It had nothing to do with his teeth, but was a 1924 penny and ticket stubs to the 140 West Pike Sideshow and the Louis Sonny Museum of Crime. The discovery made national headlines, and an actual distant relative came forward to claim Elmer McCurdy's body, which was buried on April 22, 1977, in the Boot Hill section of the Summit View Cemetery in Guthrie, Oklahoma, next to the actual body of outlaw Bill Doolin. 2 feet of concrete were poured on top of the coffin to ensure that McCurdy's rambling days were over.